What's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to talk about the differences between AMCAS, AACOMAS, and the TMDSAS. There are multiple services to apply for medical school. So one is AMCAS, which is primarily for MD schools only. The AACOMAS, which is primarily for the DO schools only, and the TMDSAS, which is for medical schools, dental schools, and vet schools in Texas. They are also primarily for MD schools, but I do believe that they have one or two DO schools that you could apply through TMDSAS as well. So you may not need to apply through all three services, or you may. So I just wanted to give you the differences between each so that you can plan ahead. With that being said, between the three, there are more similarities than differences, but there are some differences to note. I would recommend that you have one application done first, and then use that application as a baseline to modify that you'll input into the different application services. So the admin data is pretty much the same for all three services. They talk about, like your name, your parents' names, their occupation, their education level, and so on. It's pretty much the same for all three. The transcript is also the same for all three services, and you will talk about the courses that you have taken, and you will also talk about the courses that you will be taking if you still have courses to take. You also talk about course that you are currently taking, but you have not received a grade for it yet. With that being said, you do have to send your transcripts to all three services. So make sure you do that so that your grade inputs does get verified against your transcript. The addresses for that is all on the website for the respective application service. Next, I do want to remind one thing about AACOMAS. In AACOMAS, you can pay for a service that will enter the grades for you. So once they receive your transcript, AACOMAS staff will enter the grade for you. And from what I remember, it was $60 for that service. But I did not have the best experience doing that. I would recommend that you manually input all your grades. And what I mean by that, once they input your grades, then you may have a tough time changing it. If they enter something wrongly, you cannot change those grades. So you would have to go through their bureaucracy to change things around. So I found that a bit frustrating. In addition, if they put a certain class under a science category instead of that being under the arts category or something like that, that might mess up your science GPA. To also make that change, you'd have to go through their bureaucracy if you do opt in for the transcript input service in AACOMAS. So up to you, but just keep that in mind if you do elect to do that. Next, the timeline. So the timeline for AMCAS, the application opens on or about May 1st, and then you can submit it usually by early June, sometimes by end of May. And the reason why that application is open for that long, like almost a month, is because AMCAS knows that it takes a while for you to be able to input all your grades and all your experiences and your essays and so on. AACOMAS, they also open on or about May 1st, and now you can submit it immediately. That was not the case before. Before, you would have to wait till end of May, early June to submit it, but now as soon as you are done with it, you can submit it. That is really a adoption from TMDSAS, because TMDSAS can do the same thing. Like, you can submit it once you have the application ready. So with that being said, for AACOMAS and TMDSAS, yeah, it is nice to have your application submitted as soon as possible, but please do not rush it, and make sure that you check and make sure everything is good to go exactly the way you want to present yourself. For MCAT next, AAMC automatically feeds your MCAT score into the AMCAS application service, so you don't have to forward anything. Since MCAT is part of AAMC and AMCAS is also part of AAMC, it just kind of like automatically jives together. One thing about AMCAS too, so most schools in AMCAS, most of the MD schools, they allow your MCAT to be about up to 3 years old. Check your school obviously on what their terms are about that, but most schools on AMCAS, the MD schools, do allow up to 3 years. On AACOMAS, you have to forward your MCAT score from AAMC to AACOMAS so that they could input the MCAT score for you. It does not automatically feed from AAMC to AACOMAS, so make sure you do forward that. It takes, I will say, about 2 to 3 weeks for all that to happen and be inputted into your application. Typically, the DO schools, they accept a MCAT score between 3 to 5 years old. But again, check with your school. Exceptions may allow you to go even older than that if possible. For TMDSAS, same situation as AACOMAS. You do have to forward your MCAT score from AMC to TMDSAS, and typically the schools in Texas, they allow an MCAT score up to 5 years old. Next, personal statement. For AMCAS, you're allowed to have up to 5,300 characters, including spaces. For AACOMAS, you are allowed to have up to 4,500 characters, including spaces. For TMDSAS, you're allowed to have up to 5,000 characters, including spaces. But in addition to that, you also have 2 additional essays that are 25 characters each. One is on personal characteristics, and the other one is any personal obstacles that you have faced that made you better, and so on. That one is an optional one, but it is highly recommended that you do that essay as well. Also, on TMDSAS, if you were prior service military, if you are a veteran, there's a military essay, and it just talks about your experiences in the military and how that has improved you. And then there's also another essay if you are a non-traditional student. Same thing, it just asks you about your experiences as a non-traditional student. So TMDSAS does have some extra essays than AACOMAS and AMCAS. Next, for experiences, for AMCAS, they allow you to input up to 15 activities, and you're allowed to flag 3 activities as most meaningful. For those activities, you get 500 characters, including spaces, and for the most meaningful ones, you get 1325 characters. For AACOMAS, you are allowed 15 or more. From what I remember, I didn't have a limit, but I'm tracking now with my research now that you can do about 15. But check on your typical year. If you're allowed to do more than 15, you may have to stop at 15. They are all doing 600 characters limit with those. For TMDSAS, it's a little bit different. So you can have as many activities as you want, but you have different sections instead of different categories like in AMCAS and in AACOMAS. You have different sections that you include the activities under, and those activities can fall under different sections, and I'll explain with an example in a little bit. But those activities, those experiences, you have up to 300 characters, and you can write about 3 most meaningful activities, and you get 500 characters, including spaces for that. So what I mean by the different experience activities, I'm going to show you part of my application so you have a general image of what it should look like. So this is my AMCAS experience, and as you can see, you could tag it with what is the type of it, the name of it, and then you talk about it. And again, this is up to 700 characters. And then you get 15 of these. But out of those 15, you can tag 3 of them most meaningful, and then you get extra character space for them, 1,325 characters, including spaces to be exact. And this is what it looks like for AMCAS. Next, for AACOMAS, for my application year, we were allowed to have pretty much unlimited from what I'm tracking, but I'm hearing now that it might be 15 or less for this year and on. But this is what it looks like. You don't have anywhere where you can tag most meaningful or anything like that. Character limit is 600 characters, including spaces. It's very similar to AMCAS. You have the experience type and so on. TMDSAS, this is a typical experience activity description, and as you can see, it's only 300 characters, and they have different sections. Like they'll have a leadership section, they'll have a clinical activity section, and inside that section you can have different activities. So for example, for this one, I was under the leadership section, and I talked about Toastmasters and how I was a president. And you're allowed up to 300 characters, including spaces. And then also in TMDSAS, you can tag 3 most meaningful experiences. This is that section for that, and I talked about my 3, and you're allowed up to 500 characters, including spaces. Next, for letters of recommendations, for AMCAS, you're allowed up to 10. For AACOMAS, you're allowed up to 6. And for TMDSAS, technically you're allowed up to 4 if you want to do individual letters. But if you do a committee letter, then it is 1 committee letter plus 1 extra letter. In the aggregate, you can potentially do up to 4 individual letters, and that's what I did. For the fees, for AMCAS, you pay a flat fee of $170 to apply to one school, and then $40 for additional schools that you want to add to your AMCAS application. For AACOMAS, similar model as AMCAS, flat fee is $195 for one school and then $45 for additional schools. And for TMDSAS, this is the beauty of Texas application, is that you just pay one flat fee of 185 schools, and you could include all the Texas medical schools that you want to apply to under that umbrella of $185, which is amazing and a huge blessing for medical students applying to Texas medical schools. Lastly, the TMDSAS does have something that AACOMAS and AMCAS do not have, and it is a chronology. Basically, you have to talk about everything that you did since high school to the August of the matriculating year. So if you're applying to enter medical school in May of 2019, you would have to include everything from high school to August of 2020. They want to see everything that you have done and everything that you plan on doing until you start medical school. Now, with that being said, this breakdown of the 3 different services is what I'm tracking as of April 14, 2020. This might be changing for next year. So this is a good baseline for you guys, but I would highly recommend that you look into all 3 services and do some research to make sure that this is as accurate as it is for your application year. Thank you guys for listening. I hope this was helpful. If you have any suggestions or questions for me, please let me know. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'll be making more and more videos, especially as I start medical school. Thank you.